What happens when an unstoppable force collides with an immovable object? What happens when rage meets rage, when violence meets violence, and when the most dangerous man in WWE steps into the ring with the Scottish Warrior who fears absolutely nothing? Last night on Friday Night Smackdown, we got our answer, and let me tell you something right now: what Jacob Fatu did to Drew McIntyre wasn't just a match. It wasn't just a beatdown. It was a statement written in blood, sweat, and absolute destruction that sent shockwaves through the entire WWE Universe. If you thought you knew what brutality looked like, think again, because the Samoan werewolf just redefined it. And Drew McIntyre? Drew McIntyre might never be the same. But before we dive into the carnage, before we break down every bone-crushing moment of what went down, you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand the tension that's been building, the pressure cooker that's been ready to explode, and why this wasn't just another match on another Friday night. This was personal. This was about respect. This was about proving who really belongs at the top of the mountain in WWE, and brother, only one man walked out of that ring standing tall. Now, let's rewind just a bit, because this story doesn't start on SmackDown. This story starts weeks ago when Drew McIntyre, the man who's faced everyone from Brock Lesnar to Roman Reigns, the man who's held championships in main event WrestleManias, looked directly into the camera and said something that caught everyone's attention. He said Jacob Fatu was nothing more than a hired gun. He said Fatu was just another member of the bloodline, another soldier following orders, and that when push came to shove, when it was one-on-one with no backup, Fatu wouldn't be able to hang with a true warrior. Those words lit a fuse. Because here's what Drew didn't fully appreciate: Jacob Fatu isn't like the other members of the bloodline. He's not Jimmy. He's not G. This isn't a man who got here because of family legacy alone. Jacob Fatu earned his reputation in the trenches, in promotions where the lights weren't as bright but the fights were twice as real. This is a man who's been called one of the most athletic super heavyweights in the history of professional wrestling. This is a man who can move like a cruiserweight but hit like a freight train. And when Drew McIntyre questioned his heart, questioned his ability to stand alone, Fatu didn't just take offense. He took that personally. The tension built over the following weeks. Backstage confrontations that security had to break up. Social media exchanges that had fans picking sides. And then, finally, the match was made official. Drew McIntyre versus Jacob Fatu. One-on-one. No bloodline interference. Just two of the most dangerous men in WWE locked in the ring together. The WWE Universe was split right down the middle. On one side, you had the McIntyre faithful who believed in the Scottish Warrior's experience, his toughness, his ability to weather any storm and come out on top. On the other side, you had people who'd seen what Fatu was capable of, who knew that when this man gets going, he's practically unstoppable. Friday Night Smackdown. The arena was absolutely electric. You could feel it the moment Jacob Fatu's music hit. The crowd erupted, and when that man walked down the ramp, there was this aura around him. This intensity. His eyes locked on the ring like nothing else in the world existed. No playing to the crowd. No theatrics. Just pure, focused aggression. And then Drew McIntyre's music hit, and the Scottish Warrior emerged with that signature intensity we've all come to know. The sword held high. The confidence radiating off him. These two locked eyes from across the ring, and you just knew this was going to be something special. The bell rang, and immediately these two collided in the center of the ring like two freight trains meeting head-on. Drew landed the first big shot, a thunderous chop that echoed through the arena. Fatu responded with a headbutt that would have knocked out a normal man. Back and forth they went, neither willing to give an inch, and the crowd was going absolutely insane. Drew used his technical prowess, trying to ground Fatu, work the leg, take away that explosive athleticism. But every time Drew thought he had control, Fatu would explode with this raw power that just defied logic. About 5 minutes in, Drew hit a huge belly-to-belly suplex that sent Fatu flying across the ring. The crowd popped huge, and Drew was calling for the Claymore, setting up in the corner, waiting for Fatu to get to his feet. This was it. One Claymore and the Scottish Warrior would prove his point. Fatu slowly got up, turned around, and Drew charged, but here's where everything changed. Jacob Fatu, this 300-pound monster, leaped into the air and caught Drew McIntyre mid-Claymore with a super kick that connected so perfectly, so brutally, that the sound echoed through the entire arena. Drew dropped like he'd been shot, and the momentum completely shifted. What happened next can only be described as a systematic destruction. Fatu wasn't just trying to win anymore. He was trying to send a message. He pulled Drew up and delivered a devastating Samoan drop that shook the ring. Then another. Then another. Drew was trying to fight back, throwing everything he had, but Fatu was in that zone. You know the zone I'm talking about, when a wrestler is so locked in that nothing's stopping them. Drew managed to create some separation, hit the ropes, but Fatu caught him mid-run with a pop-up Samoan drop that had the entire crowd on their feet. The referee was checking on Drew, but Fatu wasn't done. Not even close. Fatu dragged Drew to the corner, and you could see it in his eyes. He was going up top. Now, when a man Jacob Fatu's size climbs to the top rope, something special is about to happen. The crowd was buzzing with anticipation. Some fans were yelling for Drew to move. Others were in complete awe of what they were about to witness. Fatu steadied himself on the top rope, measured Drew, who was laid out in the ring, and then, oh my god, then he launched himself into the air with a moonsault that seemed to hang in the air forever before crashing down onto Drew McIntyre with the force of a meteor impact. The ring shook. The crowd exploded. Even the commentary team was at a loss for words. But Jacob Fatu didn't go for the pin. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't about just winning the match anymore. Fatu pulled Drew up again, hoisted him onto his shoulders, and delivered the most devastating running power slam you've ever seen, driving Drew into the mat with authority. The crowd was chanting, "This is awesome," but there was also this sense of concern because Drew McIntyre, one of the toughest men in WWE, was being completely dismantled. Drew, to his credit, showed the heart of a warrior. He kicked out at 2. He refused to stay down. He was fighting on pure instinct and pride at this point, and you had to respect it. But Fatu just looked at him with this expression that said, "You question me? You question my heart? Let me show you what heart really looks like." Fatu hit the ropes and delivered a thunderous hip attack that nearly took Drew's head off. Then he pulled him up one more time, positioned him just right, and delivered his finishing move with such impact that the entire arena felt it. The referee's hand hit the mat. 1, 2, 3. It was over. Jacob Fatu stood tall in the center of the ring, and the message had been sent loud and clear. This wasn't just a victory. This was a statement that Jacob Fatu is not just another member of the bloodline. He's not just a hired gun. He's a legitimate main event force in WWE who can stand with anyone on the roster and not just compete but dominate. The aftermath was just as important as the match itself. Medical personnel rushed to check on Drew McIntyre, who was slow to get up. When he finally did, there was this brief moment where Drew and Fatu locked eyes one more time. Drew, battered and bruised, gave the slightest nod of respect. Because even in defeat, even after being wrecked in the middle of that ring, Drew McIntyre recognized what he'd just been through. He'd been through a war with a legitimate warrior, and sometimes you have to acknowledge greatness when you see it. The WWE Universe has been talking about nothing else since Smackdown went off the air. Social media exploded with reactions. Some fans were shocked at how dominant Fatu was. Others were asking what this means for Drew McIntyre moving forward. And everyone, absolutely everyone, is wondering what's next for Jacob Fatu, because if this is the kind of performance he delivers when he's trying to prove a point, imagine what he's capable of when there's a championship on the line. Let's talk about what this means for the broader WWE landscape, because this match has implications that stretch far beyond just these two competitors. Jacob Fatu has now firmly established himself as one of the top heels in all of WWE. His association with the bloodline gives him that main event credibility, but last night he proved he doesn't need anyone standing beside him to be a threat. He can carry his own weight, and that makes him incredibly dangerous. For Drew McIntyre, this is an interesting crossroads. Does he demand a rematch? Does he refocus on championship pursuits? Or does this loss light a fire under him that we haven't seen in a while? The beauty of professional wrestling is that every match tells a story, and every story has consequences. What we witnessed on SmackDown wasn't just about who was better on that particular night. It was about respect, about proving doubters wrong, about showing the world that you belong at the highest level. Jacob Fatu did all of that and more. He walked into that ring with something to prove, and he left with everyone in the WWE Universe knowing exactly who he is and what he's capable of. Think about the athleticism we witnessed. A man of Fatu's size moving the way he does is almost unfair. The moonsault alone is something that defies physics. But it's not just the athletic ability, it's the intensity, the controlled aggression, the way he systematically broke down one of WWE's toughest competitors. That's what separates good wrestlers from great ones. That's what separates moments from memories. And we have to acknowledge Drew McIntyre's performance as well, because in defeat, he showed exactly why he's respected throughout the industry. He didn't quit. He didn't take shortcuts. He fought with everything he had until there was nothing left to give. That's the mark of a true professional, and even though he came up short against an absolute force of nature. The question everyone's asking now is, where does WWE go from here with Jacob Fatu? Do they keep him in this feud with Drew, potentially building to an even bigger match down the line? Do they move him into the championship picture, where honestly he absolutely belongs? Or does the Bloodline storyline take precedence, with Fatu being a key player in whatever Roman Reigns and the family have planned? The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this so exciting. What we do know is that Friday Night Smackdown just became must-see television again. When you have performers like Jacob Fatu delivering at this level, when you have storylines that matter and matches that have real stakes, that's when wrestling is at its absolute best. That's when fans are engaged, invested, and talking about what they just witnessed long after the show goes off the air. Last night, Jacob Fatu wrecked Drew McIntyre. There's no other way to say it. He dominated from start to finish once he took control, and he left no doubt in anyone's mind that he's one of the most dangerous men in all of WWE. This is the kind of performance that changes careers, that elevates someone to that next level, and based on what we saw, Jacob Fatu is just getting started. The WWE Universe better strap in, because if this is what Fatu brings to a match where he's proving a point, imagine what's coming next. The Samoan werewolf is unleashed, and the entire roster just got put on notice. Drew McIntyre learned that lesson the hard way, and now everyone else is looking over their shoulder wondering if they're next. So what did you think of Jacob Fatu's dominant performance? Do you think Drew McIntyre will bounce back from this, or has Fatu exposed something we haven't seen before? And more importantly, who do you want to see Jacob Fatu face next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because the conversation is just getting started. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the most brutal and impressive performances we've seen on SmackDown in a long time, show some love, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed to WWE Sphere, because we're bringing you all the latest news, analysis, and breakdowns from the world of professional wrestling. The Samoan werewolf has arrived, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.